Okay, this is part 2 of Rapalicious Female Voice. In this part, I tie up some loose ends like the significance of showing the Diana Davison, feminism laughing out loud, clips. I had a purpose in the first video, but there was a second reason I added the clips. Anyhow, let's continue the video, shall we? Back to addressing Barbarossa's Rapalicious video. God, I love that word, Rapalicious.
Now, I'll give you an example of the type of thought that these people want to inhibit. The other day, I was looking at portraits of pinup dolls online, right? Pinup women or whatever they're called. And I noticed a recurring theme in these images. And that recurring theme was that these pinup girls are often pictured attempting to do, traditionally male tasks, but failing because, and this is just my speculation, something about the male psyche wants women to marvel at us and our male inventions and our male accomplishments. And part of us wants women to attempt them and fail so that we can step in and show them how it's done.
That, sir, is an interesting observation. I have experienced this, and never became consciously aware of it. I've always wondered why there was a certain portion of the male mind that found certain manly aspects in women to be appealing. The example here being the pin-up dolls displaying beautiful women engaging in manly activities, especially masculine for the time period. And you're right about that desire to have the women not do as well as the men, and I believe your explanation works. Your explanation that a man wants to show off his manly capability to the lesser sex. And I would like to expand on that. After watching your video, I had to sit back and reflect on my interests and pursuits during my days of pursuing women, and I had to ask myself if this rule applied to me, and after doing some thinking, yes, I too have had an interest in tomboys and manly, capable women. In fact, it's no secret I can't stand weak, incompetent, eternal daughter type of females, neither as friends or as lovers. But the aspect of do I want them to ultimately fail to be as good as me in the categories of interests we share? I do believe the answer is yes, and I had to think long and hard about this, and I came to the conclusion, I have often sought out women who share my interests, and I want to be better than her at those interests. And I believe the reason why is the identity of man as savior, hero, utility. Let's take auto repair for example, since that was one of the pin-ups displayed in your video. If me and a woman are working on a car together, building a hot rod, then I would want to be more capable than her. But I believe the reason why is that I know, and have always known, in some way, that a woman chooses a man, falls in love with a man, based on how well he impresses her. In other words, how well you can flamboyantly display your utility, your usability. If a woman can do a thing better than a man, then what use does she have for that man? Women live vicariously through men. If a woman can do for herself better than you can do for her, then she would have no interest in you and would instead choose a more capable man to have feelings for. Since again, hypergamy and all, women reach up, not down, for a mate. A man must be taller, stronger, faster, smarter, wealthier, more capable, etc. And I believe that subconscious knowledge of her hypergamy keeps us men afraid to fail in front of them, and I think it reminds us that in everything us and her do, we have to be better than them or lose our value to them. I think deep down inside, every man knows he is a pussy begging tool to be used. But now let's take a look at why there is the aspect of the male psyche that seeks out the tomboy, the woman who shares our manly interests. I believe the reason for this is that when all is said and done, femininity is disgusting behavior, women spending hours on bland, boring gossip, like some type of fucking torture to our ears, their makeup and nails and all their petty pointless stupid superficial self-absorbed narcissistic nonsense. It is fucking nauseating. But a woman who shares our interests, acts a little bit like a boy, is a girl we can relate to as people. Let's face it, a fully grown woman is like a toddler, stumbling bumbling fucking retard making obnoxious vocal sounds, and fundamentally incapable of relating to us on an adult human level. But the tomboy engaging in our domain of interests, feels to us more like a grown-up, like people. However, if she can do our activities better than we can, we are useless to her. So it's a bit like she should love playing guitar like me, but not better than me. I think it forms that sort of mentality. So in the end, we want them to take interest in our tasks, but fail so that we can be the mentor, we can be the hero, we can be their utility, to help her to be better at it, but never as good as us, lest we cease to have a reason for her to love us. And in the one picture of the woman holding the hammer and sucking her thumb, it says to me, I'm just a girl, help me do things big strong man. This is a flamboyant display of femininity, femininity in this case being utter weakness, incompetence, inferiority, helplessness. And so I think this particular picture caters to the part of the male mind that wants an ultra-feminine woman, instead of I want a tomboy, a girl like me, only slightly inferior. The target here is I want a completely helpless woman, fundamentally incapable of doing the most basic things, and the type of male mind this appeals to is the type that fears women having capability, becoming autonomous. You see, an incapable male, an insecure male, will absolutely fear any drop of competence in a woman, because his utility is so weak and poor, that any level of independence threatens his utilitarian worth. And in what you go on to say next is also true about the traditionalists not wanting us to talk about these things, and it is because they are afraid to go further down the rabbit hole they dared to peer into. I want you to think about a common mentality found in these tradcans, their insistence that women should not work, must stay home. Their excuse is the children need to be raised by a biological parent, and notice how if you suggest maybe swapping the genders, the man stay home, the woman put in 40 hours a week, there will always be some excuse. I won't cover all the excuses here, but this excuse is based in the fact that they are hiding behind family and hiding behind children. Their true motivation for all of this is fear of women getting off their ass and doing for themselves. Picture any of the tradcans we've argued in the past. Picture their wife making him a sandwich, and then saying, "Honey, I was thinking now that both our kids are in high school, and can look out for themselves, maybe I should go to college." You can just picture the tradcan choking on the sandwich and then objecting. They fear women being independent. Because in their mind, the way it works is simple. Women must be subservient to their husband, wholly reliant on them, and this is based on the fear of if she becomes a capable woman, she'll have no use for me, and she will leave me. I think deep in the recesses of the minds of these tradcans, is an understanding that he is not loved. He is loved, but very conditionally. He is loved so long as he can protect and provide for her. Should he, the great heroic Superman, fall from grace, he becomes a loser, he becomes useless, she leaves him for not being man enough. Again, men are aware of woman's hypergamous nature, and so long as a woman is 100% reliant on him as the big strong provider male, he has her in his life. Should a rival male with superior ability enter the picture, he gets insecure and jealous. Should the woman have a drop of independence, she threatens his utility. A man knows when all is said and done, he is a disposable utility. So a picture like this, of a completely helpless woman, an ultra-feminine woman, displaying how fundamentally incapable she is, makes her easy in the mind of the insecure male. Even a weak cowardly male can be a hero to such an incompetent woman, and so the type of tradcan that explicitly fears women's independence, and explicitly fears women losing their femininity, has this fear because he wants all women to be the utmost feminine, useless, helpless and capable, so that he, no matter how pathetic, can be a strong, capable, manly man, a good utility, thus desired by women. A feminine woman makes him feel masculine by comparison. He needs to feel masculine because that is the requirement for attaining the affections of women, and thereby getting sexual satisfaction and earning human worth by virtue of gaining a woman's approval. And of course a masculine woman threatens the insecure male, and all women becoming more masculine threatens to raise the bar, applying expectations on him that he fears he cannot live up to. Thus there is a fear-driven knee-jerk reaction on their part to keep men manly, and keep women feminine. In fact, wasn't that part of the original MGTOW manifesto? That conservative-based need to make men manly and make women womanly, and as you are explaining in this video, the contempt the tradcan has for modern MGTOW is fear-driven. We are voyaging down that rabbit hole, and we are discovering unflattering things about both men and women, and it frightens them, because they don't want to look into that mirror of truth. I once believed the notion that women are insecurity-driven, and men are confidence-driven creatures. However, that is only the outward facade. It's actually the other way around. As Stardust was talking about, women have that automatic value thing going on, but men, his dick, his body, has no value. Only his actions can have value, and there is this knowledge in all of us, and it is scary. This becomes a part of why men seek women's approval. It's not just securing mating rights, or getting access to pussy, it's also a validation of self. A man is a creature of zero worth. His worth may only be granted to him by a woman. Women are creatures that grant a man his value, and men know this deep down inside, and women are aware of this too. This is why a man desired by other women, instantly becomes attractive to a woman that otherwise did not have an interest in him. It is the women going after men who have a wedding ring, you know, proof that someone thinks he has human worth. A man is aware of his own zero value. He doubts himself when women doubt him. He hates himself when women hate him. A man is an insecure child, forever seeking to acquire worth from women, and then to maintain that worth. That's not confidence-driven, that's insecurity-driven. Under all the chest-thumping and masculine pride lies a scared child. The more feminine he needs his woman, the more he lacks confidence in himself and requires her femininity to make him feel manly. He needs to feel manly because of the implication that manliness is a thing valued by women. Thus his manliness is like a credit score. It is not direct worth, but it is potential worth, waiting for the female's approval/confirmation of that worth. The Tradkans fear this sort of knowledge. They'd rather keep it hidden from themselves. They don't want to be reminded of the truth of women, or of themselves. I've mentioned in the past. The married Tradkan hates our bachelor advocacy, and our negative talk of woman as parasite. And the reason they hate it is because there is a small part of them aware of the ultimate and heartbreaking truth. They are not in a loving relationship. It is a prostitution contract. His money, her pussy. This is the foundation of all that sacred love. And of course a marriage is more than its foundation, but still, that is the foundation. And I need to point out, we talk about man's worth as a utility, and proclaim women have automatic value, but let's not forget, this automatic value is not of her as much as it is her utility as reliever of sexual tension. But I am straying. We offer the red pill and blue pill. The Tradkan is the man who says give me the blue pill, because I can't handle the truth. Give me the sweet illusion, put me back in the matrix. I now reflect on something rather profound that I came up with as a child. If you want to find the truth, look behind you, it is the thing you spent your life running from. Now, unrelated to your video, here's something to think about. The Tradkans are running from our truth, but are we running from theirs? Now this next bit was originally going to be the end of my last video, or I should say, where the last video left off that I cut short, and it was supposed to be after the MGTOW manifesto pub skit. And that's why MGTOW should not create a manifesto, because Sandman will get shot. Again, I wish I had more involvement in the olden days of the movement. My involvement was rather sporadic. I recall Fred X and his general attitude, but I can't speak for him. I never heard him talk about marriage one way or the other. I mean, maybe he didn't. But I don't recall the issue coming up. Ideas about male nature and female nature, these were subjects whose domain was almost exclusively PUA. Nearly all the early anti-feminist discussions was conservatives and libertarians bitching about feminism. The feminists loved to snuggle up with Uncle Sam, etc., just making fun of feminists and feminism and arguing with them. It wasn't common to take the discussion anywhere else. But ultimately, no matter what the past, who cares? What does it matter where we came from? I've stated before that the attitude and ideas discussed in current MGTOW circles looks like a hybrid of two things I seen a long time ago, the PUAs and the sex separatists. They were like disgruntled PUAs or true force loneliness types. These two oddly hung around the same circles, and at some point merged with the anti-feminists. And I see modern MGTOW as being an evolution of those two things merging together. But it doesn't matter where we were, it matters more where we are and where we are going. I believe we are on a precipice asking where do we go from here? We know there is no going back. We've seen how that works, and no thank you. Not only is it not wanted, it is unworkable. The traditionalists are screaming that we must go back. It's the only way that works. The moment you begin to argue these people, you see what pussy-begging white knights they are, ready to throw men under the bus, ready to call you a basement-dwelling video game-playing neckbeard living with your mama, ready to call you a misogynist and every other nasty name the feminists call us, because they're self-hating man-hating pussy worshippers. We know there is no going back, but the question we have to ask ourselves is, which way is forward? It's an interesting situation when you know the way back, but you can't figure out from that the way forward. Part of the reason is the past is not one thing, it is a multitude of things. So too is the way forward. It's a multitude of things, but still, where do we go? We can't all become sex separatists. We can't all abstain from women. This may work for some individuals, but it can't work for society or humanity as a whole. And it won't work for two reasons. 1. You just aren't going to convince every man to abstain from women. 2. Even if you could, it would lower human population so quickly we'd be extinct in no time. You'll notice the fixation with MGTOW doesn't work because we need babies as being a popular gripe. I believe a part of this, when not ultimately justified by commie-fearing conservative libertarian Alex Jones survivalists, is coming from the very fact that the loudest speakers of MGTOW have no real convincing step-by-step blueprint for where do we go from here, so all they see from MGTOW is the road to nowhere, and they're not wrong. We are not fully convinced of the way forward, and we have not built the bridges and the roads forward. There is, how do we as individuals move forward, and how do we as a society move forward? This is where we need to be focusing the bulk of our energy. Because we don't have these answers, we often get stuck spinning our wheels just bellyaching about women and or feminists. And that's fine. If you've ever had your vehicle stuck in the snow, you know you need to spin those wheels for a while to get some traction. I was trying to lay down the blueprints for the way forward, in my videos, by arguing against the Tradkans, we can see all the hang-ups within our philosophy, maybe not MGTOW as applied to the individual, but for our culture. Yes, there are hang-ups. I was putting forth ideas when I got sidetracked by the conservative anarcho-libertarian hijacking, ideas on how we as a whole society, not just individuals, can move forward to a more balanced and autonomous lifestyle, were instantly being attacked, not because they were unworkable or counterproductive to our goals, but because they went against the conservative grain, the libertarian and anarchist grain. Ideas like increased parental leave and an improved daycare system that will give single parents of both sexes an opportunity to work without the need of a stay-at-home 24 hours a day parent to look after kids for just a few years of their developing lives, or to look after them a couple hours a day in between school time. This of course was pure blasphemy. That's taxes, that's government, that's just like the feminists, and they quickly reveal how much they don't give a fucking rat's ass about moving forward, or balancing the scales. They only care about the reinstitution of what feminists would call patriarchy. They claim it worked in the past and will always work. All other systems and ideas and modifications are communist and statist and feminist, and every other fear-driven knee-jerk reactionary boogeyman they could scream at the top of their lungs when these fear of change motherfuckers were exposed to the notion of change. I believed at the time, and I believe this is still applicable, we must cut these motherfuckers out of our movement like the cancer they are. And I'm not saying people can't be libertarian or conservative or socialist or whatever have you, and be a part of our MGTOW philosophy and MRM. I'm saying, their miscellaneous mainstream pop culture ideologies cannot be allowed to hinder the progress of MGTOW and MRM. These people need to understand, before they were anarchists, they had penises. Before they were libertarians, they had penises. Before they were socialists or conservatives, they had penises. They were men before they were any ideological idea, and they need to understand. All ideologies are based on the foundation of the male-to-female dynamic. All ideologies, nations, cultures, races, species, are based first and foremost on the interaction between the males and the females. That is, the male and female interaction must trump all other concerns. And with that in mind, they are men before they are anything. Put men's rights above all other things. When a libertarian or socialist value conflicts with an MRM value, the MRM value must be given the priority. Once we have alleviated ourselves of the misandrous reactionaries and the utopian idealists, we can begin to lay down the blueprints for a better tomorrow. We can actually get to work on forging the path forward. The two crippling problems that must be dealt with is men do need sexual satisfaction and the species does need babies. We're not on the verge of extinction by any means, and so we don't need to panic about getting our numbers up just yet, but we do need to be mindful that any system with a lower than 2.1 babies per womb will be unsustainable in the long run. And I'm not worried about sustainability over 10,000 years. I'm looking at things in blocks of 200 or 100 years to get there and 100 years of sustainability. Because who knows what situation humanity will have itself in 200 years. Because seriously, who knows what the human condition is going to be in 2214. So I just think about things like, can we as a society do this thing for the next 100 or so years? If yes, then it's fucking sustainable enough. But like I said, we must be thinking about moving forward, and I do have ideas about how to move forward, realistic ideas that is, and I will be offering those ideas in future videos. Point is, there is no going back. The Tradcan states that the old way worked. Well, no, it really didn't when you think about it. If it worked, it would still be that way. They're always scapegoating feminism, you know, the great evil that spontaneously burst out of nowhere like the Big Bang, a self-created evil that must be slain like some dragon. A thing in which women must be saved from. They refuse to accept two painful truths. 1. If women weren't the way women are, feminism would never have happened. 2. If the traditional, so-called patriarchy, worked, feminism wouldn't have been born. Those are two jagged pills the Tradcan needs to swallow before he can swallow the red pill. The Tradcans often bring up that our rejection of marriage sounds an awful lot like the feminists complaining that marriage is a trap and slavery etc. To which I bring up that in the olden days of the early feminist movement and drawing from the way things were in the time period that gave birth to the feminist movement, they were right. Women had shit for opportunity to be independent. Society basically twisted their arms and forced them into marriage by artificially constraining them and making marriage the path of least resistance to prosperity. Marriage isn't natural, sacred, and functioning, when you have to create artificial circumstances to coerce people into it. And once a woman was married, in some ways she had a free meal ticket, but had to have permission from her husband to do anything. Marriage for the longest time has been like some animal unfit for survival being artificially kept alive by humans capturing them and deliberately breeding them to keep them around. Marriage is the dinosaur we won't let die. and the fact there is so much worship of the sanctity of family, is an indicator of how fragile and on the verge of extinction it is. We insert the marriage and nuclear family dogma into our society to blind us to believe this is the way it was, is, and must always be. And just to point out again, the artificial constraints placed on women to coerce them into marriage, earning the social rules the title patriarchy, just to keep alive the marriage institution, and the implementation of bachelor taxes, and this other artificial garbage, is reminiscent of keeping something on life support rather than letting it pass away. And now the marriage mafia is telling themselves feel-good lies to ease their nerves, like, marriage isn't dying, people are just waiting longer to get married. These people aren't good with math, the marriage statistics are not conducted for one age demographic. At best they're going to have to tell themselves, okay, look, marriage has been on the decline, and with all those 20-somethings and 30-somethings not marrying, we're about to see a motherfucking marriage explosion as they've all been on strike holding out until they are 40, so hang on everyone. Marriage is about to go through the roof. But again, my point, if marriage worked, and the old traditional ways were workable, feminism wouldn't have existed. They can bitch that MGTOW is unsustainable. Of course the Stardust and Barbarossa era of MGTOW has only been an idea for the past few years. Traditional nuclear family shit has been the norm, the mainstream, for centuries, and history has proven its instability. To put it simply, if it fucking worked, it'd still be working and you wouldn't be bitching about feminism ruining it. And speaking of that, everything to them is feminism. Feminism is the great dragon to slay. But how are they going to slay the dragon? Oh, that's right, they'll tweet mocking pictures until the cows come home. That'll shut up those uppity feminists and they'll get back in the kitchen and make sandwiches and babies.
Now, let me ask you, am I the only one getting sick of this shit? Am I the only one who wants to form a pushback against these people, anybody, TradCon, MRA, whatever, who insists on telling us how we can and can't behave in order to sound nice and to not have a nasty tone in regards to women?
I agree we need to push back. The Tradcons and the hijackers have no problem running off at the mouth and putting us down, shaming us, denouncing us, comparing us to fucking Elliot Rodger, just because we don't buy into their happy blissful nuclear family values shtick. They have no problem going on the attack with accusations of leftist infiltrated the moment we talk about male DV shelters, or balancing paternity leave with maternity leave, or sharing stories about how we were false accused or actually raped. And I have seen people in our movement talk about how they were abused by their wife, or how they were sexually violated by a woman, only to be attacked by some chest-thumping manly man bullshit from these old-fashioned John Wayne clones, with claims that men can't be raped, or so you got laid when you're a kid and now you're whining about it. Or oh my god, you sound just like the feminists because you were trapped in an abusive relationship. Anytime we share a personal story about how we were victimized in any way, we get the manly men types saying oh you just want to be a victim. Or we get that shit from the PUA types with their obsessive alpha male masculinity shit, about all we have to do is man up and take charge. The MGTOW philosophy is laughed at even by those within our ranks under the MRM banner. They don't hesitate to push their marriage propaganda onto us, talk about the sanctity of marriage, the sanctity of nuclear family and the sanctity of motherhood. They whip out the insistence that it's all nature and you can't fight nature. These fucknuggets claim that the old-fashioned 1950s nuclear family traditional model is 100% human nature and any deviation whatsoever is an evil corrupt abomination of our nature and unworkable or unsustainable. And then when you give a rebuttal to show how minor modifications to any aspect of our system can act as compensation mechanisms to force stability within a new model, they go off the deep end with their communist-fearing, leftist accusing, big cafaphobia. They say the old way is the only way, and then back it up by refusing to allow any alternative to make it work. The old way is not the only functioning way, it is the only way they will personally accept, is the problem. These people attack us, they fire the first shot, and I agree it is time we started firing back. We got the marriage mafia among us like Mystery who swear MGTOW are just anti-family jealous scum and cowardly psychopaths who attack him for having a family. Yet funny thing is, there are married men here in the manosphere who are respected by MGTOW. There are family men who are respected by MGTOW. I won't deny there are a few assholes among us that actually do prove Mystery's point. Yes, there are some anti-family anti-marriage assholes that really do look down their nose in disgust at those who are married or have children. I have seen that. I have seen the term breeder being used as a pejorative for men who choose to be fathers. There are a few people among us that really do fit Mystery's description, but they're rare, by far and large. MGTOW is not opposed to men who've chosen to become fathers. And we don't attack men who have personally chose to get married in accordance with their religion or whatever. We don't endorse it. We don't think it is a smart move. But we don't take it upon ourselves to police the personal and private decisions of other men. My point is, these people are interestingly quick to take offense when we fire back at them, after they've fired the first shot, and I think some of it comes down to a bit of entitlement. They walk around like their traditional nuclear family shit is the default, and MGTOW are some unique individuals who choose to be sinful and unmarried, because some of us just aren't manly enough to be cut out for the responsible adulthood of marriage, and it's okay with them. They'll let us mature neckbeards live our irresponsible lifestyles so long as we don't get loud about it. Quite frankly, it's the other way around. We'll let you married men live with your wife, put that gun in her hand, and just keep praying that she never pulls the trigger. It's your life, your call. Just don't get too fucking loud about it. You're right that we need to push back. When I see these slippery little snakes posting their marriage myths fact sheet glorifying marriage, and promoting all the disproved nonsense like getting married makes you live longer and so on, when I see them, I go into ponage mode and fuck their shit up just like they were some feminist cunt. The tradcans among us pose a serious threat. They are not our allies. They are not temporary allies. They are threats to our progress. This movement has been and still is always in danger of male weakness pulling us back into pussy-whipped mode. The woman worship within us is a part of maleness that always threatens us. Stardusk mentioned his concern that MGTOW were just men on strike waiting for women to make some concessions so that men would end the strike and go back on the plantation, or something to that effect. And I mentioned a pretty high amount of MGTOW were in fact just that, and an even greater number of MRA, who do not identify as MGTOW, are just that. They bellyache about feminism and making marriage more difficult, or whatever. They just keep asking the feminists to please stop having their panties in a bunch, and please get back in the kitchen and make sandwiches. Please, pretty please be nice to us men. And again with the MGTOW, lots of butt hurting going on, you know. In the Twitter hashtag men on strike, a feminist smarted off by saying men on strike are like people who quit after they've been fired. There is a certain truth to that. I have no doubt that there are plenty of men calling themselves MGTOW simply because women just flat out reject them or because they're hurt or whatever. And you know what, that's fine, it's understandable, I get it, I really do. It reminds me of this independent Christian film my born-again cousin made me watch, sloppy cinema photography, but nonetheless a rather well-told story. An atheist who was a drug addict and a gambler runs from some loan shark. He did something to abandon his identity and seeks refuge in a church. He claims his devotion to God and makes up some convoluted story. The priest lets him stay and perform church duties, or something like that. Long time since I seen the film, and he keeps up the charade for a while, and then because he is exposed to the peaceful and charitable environment, an environment he never knew as a child, he begins to love the church life. The good, clean, loving, and godly environment gives him a new meaning. He finds God in his heart, and now it is no longer a charade. He has found Jesus and dedicates his life to serving God and working with the church. The moral of the story here is, just because people find themselves in our movement for a variety of reasons, and are nothing more than disgruntled and one blow job away from jumping ship, and this is just a quick and convenient outlet for their restless psyche, doesn't mean that they can't find strong spiritual growth among us. And when that blow job comes, they don't jump ship, because they really have found their true self, and found self-respect, and acquired a deeper understanding after all. Now obviously that won't be the case with everyone, but it can be the case with some. So it's not a problem we have, for lack of any other word, fakers among us talking a tough game while being one blow job away from jumping ship. They are here, and probably in larger number than we care to realize. But the fact that they are here, ready to jump ship, not concerned with male autonomy so much as having an outlet for their frustration with women, makes them highly susceptible to the tradcan hijacking. The fact of the matter is, it is like Diana put it to me, right-wingers, conservatives, and libertarians founded this movement, and I admitted, that's about as accurate as it gets, and it was my experience too. This all makes the tradcan shit dangerous because it is a pervasive mentality in our movement. I think it is our biggest hurdle. We can fight feminists, that's easy, just laugh at the dumb cunts. But the tradcans pose a danger because they run rampant in our movement. It is the origin of our movement, and it is a simple mentality. The death of feminism does not lead to the equality or liberation of men. It leads to being back on the plantation thumping our chests like manly men, being subservient to our wives but ignorantly blissful because we're so wrapped up in this slave mentality called manly pride. No matter how unfair shit is, no matter how much men are the shit sex, second-class citizens, disposable tools, So long as the little lady needs our big strong muscles to open a pickle jar, we feel that rush of self-worth and manliness as we pop open the pickle jar with our testosterone-fueled muscles, and we feel the pride and satisfaction of being so manly and in charge, kings of our castles, that we remain oblivious to all the shackles and abuse, defaulting to the traditional conservative mentality, the white picket fence American dream. Falling back to that as our blueprint is easy, it's simple, it's culturally bound. Many of the men among us are just hurting, because women have been cold and cruel to them. If our abusers start to smile and lay on the feminine charm, we fall right back into our subservient role. I said in a few of my videos, a little over a year ago on my old channel, that I would be able to tolerate all the unfair injustice to men, all the privileges women had. I would be willing to accept that. I have learned, for example, to accept, there are men in this world born with a silver spoon, men with greater health, better looks, a better family, a better childhood. I learned to just live with it. Some people are better than me, done more than me, have it better than me, and that's okay. We have to learn to accept we can't be number one. We have to accept our misfortunes as a part of life. So, had it not been for the abuse of feminism, I may never have awakened in any way. What got me was not all the female privileges, or even how unfair life is for men. It was the fact that these fucking good-for-nothing spoiled little bitches had the audacity to spit in our face, in place of a simple thank you. If women had done just a little less spitting, and just a little more thank you, I to this very day, would probably be a good obedient punching bag, taking my beating like a man, and at peace with the abuse and injustice. Oh, how quickly the male is subdued by a simple thank you, big strong man. The way that fuels our manly ego and encourages us to take pride in how well our awesome masculinity immunes and numbs us to their abuse and exploitation. Feminism encouraged women to take pride in their darkest nature, and they stopped being so forthcoming with the thank yous, and we woke up. A barrage of thank yous and faint appreciation from women can subdue a great many of us, both MRA and MGTOW. This is a danger. The Tradcan and his appeal to the white picket fence ideal is also dangerous. The powerful mainstream conservatism, backed by our culture's mainstream religion, and its ideals and values so deeply ingrained into us from our Western culture, poses a threat to us. The popularity of its prevalence among us now acts as a threat. The very fact that us men, due to the way we think, due to the fact we are the builders of society, and our minds are geared toward that mode of thought, due to the fact we are gynocentric by nature and by culture, becoming distracted by mainstream politics and putting all of our energy into capitalist versus Marxist economic debates, and foreign relation debates, and states' rights, company rights, big government fear, the ease to which us men can just turn a blind eye to the inequality and injustice to men, and focus instead on pitching our leftist-rightist ideological mainstream ideas. You know, when it comes to men's rights, it's like we all have ADHD. We could start a large conference, aimed at men's equality, and within the first 15 minutes get distracted and start talking about immigration or banking practices, and spend 5 hours debating anything and everything, completely losing sight of the fact the meeting was about men's rights, not immigration, racial relations, religion, economics, or football. It is unnatural for a man to think in terms of my rights as a man. He is more quick to look at himself as Canadian, an American, a white, an Asian, a Hindu, a Christian, a Marxist, a libertarian, a Chicago Bears fan, or a Trekkie, before he sees himself as a man. A man will look out for his country, his race, his religion, his sisters, but he won't look out for his brothers. All of these things make the Tradcans dangerous to us, the hijackers and the Tradcans. These people are threats, their ideas keeping us constantly tethered to the perfectly useless and ineffective mainstream pop culture political ideologies. Face it, the conservative Republicans have been fighting feminism for over a fucking century. How are they doing? They're not equipped to fight feminism because they don't understand the problem. They fight feminism like handing a cough suppressant to a person with pneumonia. By not addressing the underlying cause of the inconvenient symptom, they allow the problem to grow out of control forever worse. And when the problem becomes intolerable, do they reevaluate the strategy or understanding of their enemy? Fuck no, they just keep shouting vote for me. Got to go right wing, it's a right wing issue. Just got to bitch about feminism. And I've had people tell me that endorsing the existence of gynocentrism could be a bit of a Pandora's box, as we might turn gynocentrism into a catch-all for our problems, like the feminists do with patriarchy. Does it dawn on those people that's what we're currently doing with feminism? Feminism is the enemy, the problem, and if you, an MRA or MGTOW, say something they disapprove of, what's the first words out of their mouth? Oh my, you are sounding just like a feminist. How is their barking and belly aching about feminism any different than the feminist cries of patriarchy? So the fear of acknowledging gynocentrism will lead to a blame it all on gynocentrism, is nothing to fear because we're already doing that with feminism. The tradkins among us, the eternal blue pill bastards, they are great in numbers, from within and from outside, of our movement, and something to think about. If all of us MRAs and MGTOW shut our mouths right now, feminism will still fail, feminism will fall all on its own, we will have nothing to do with it, and the new state of things will be a sort of traditionalism, which will bind us men to a more subtle servitude to our women. Feminism may be our great enemy of today, but it's an enemy with terminal cancer. It won't be a threat that much longer. Give it a couple more decades, it will be all but dead, but male disposability, gynocentrism, and misandry will be as strong as ever. It'll just get wrapped up with a pretty bow. The poison will be all sugar-coated and yummy. The tradkins and the hijackers pose a threat. As I said in one of my last videos, I asked my audience, when they see a hijacker starting their shit, call them out on it, and the same with the tradkins. But when it comes to tradkins, it's less a matter of calling them out and more a matter of arguing them, because, as much as I hate to say this, the tradkin does push for a gender model, thus it is a relevant men's rights topic. Anyone pushing for a model of male and female interaction and gender roles, is pushing a relevant men's rights topic. They do serve the benefit of giving the MGTOW a much needed challenge. Yes, that's right, we need a challenge. It is vital for our movement forward that we be challenged. We need to argue them sometimes just to keep us grounded so that we don't find ourselves floating away from reality, living in a utopian world where wives are replaced with robots and parenthood is replaced with artificial wombs and baby farms or other stuff. And I am not saying none of that can come true or that none of that will have some sort of effect on the future. I'm just saying it does us no good to walk around in 2014 saying everyone's gender role theory is wrong, because in the year 2214 we'll all be living in this kick-ass utopia. Getting that far ahead of ourselves just becomes utopian escapism for the man who cannot bear the harshness of reality. We can't let ourselves become utopian escapists, and because we tend to be forward-thinking innovators, it becomes a very real possibility. Arguing the tradkin, point by point, is necessary, like it or not. They do bring up real problems. It is our challenge to find real solutions. We can't solve our problems and truly progress by living in an echo chamber. We need their challenge and their critiques. We need to get into the ring with them and duke it out. It will be necessary for our intellectual growth. The same is not true for the hijackers who want to derail us. I am not going to spend months studying China's economy and the French Revolution so that I can argue the merits of any given tax system with some goddamn fucking anarcho-libertarian when the problem is, he needs to quit shouting down our ideas for gender equality when it conflicts with his miscellaneous political goals. I am not wasting my time studying economics or any of that fucking horse shit to try to pwn these people when ultimately whether they realize this or not, it is irrelevant to men's equality. Sure, taxes and economy are relevant to our paychecks and the economy. It isn't relevant to men's rights. I am willing to tell these derailing hijacking motherfuckers to take a flying leap and go back to whatever political camp they come from. Get the fuck out of our space. Feminists may be your enemy because taxes or corporation rights or whatever the fuck, but an enemy of my enemy is still my goddamn enemy. When it comes to the tradkins, I won't push back with fuck off tradscum, because that type of dismissal leads to creating some MGTOW cult bullshit. The great MGTOW echo chamber where we dismiss our opponents' criticisms instead of using them as opportunities to rethink, polish and refine our ideas. So yes, I push back against the tradkin. I make no hesitation to tell these motherfuckers they are not my ally, and then proceed to invite them into the ring. I ask, what issue do you take with MGTOW? And proceed to annihilate them. This is necessary for our growth. So if you spot a tradkin, he is not your ally, he is your opponent. Do not dismiss him, but instead challenge him, argue him, with intellectual honesty, for all of the threat their mentality, their ideology, poses to our movement. Their critiques are valuable to us. I have been arguing a person on Facebook, Kevin Wayne. He has a YouTube channel, and he was one of the first people on Facebook to friend me. He has spoken positive of me in the past. But in the Honey Badger Radio Facebook page, he posted some pro-marriage tradcan bullshit, and I fucking pwned him, a long-ass argument, and I have copied and pasted the argument to my blog, which I will link to. It is worthwhile reading, in spite of the fact I didn't say anything that I haven't said at least once in my videos, so nothing radically new, but it's like watching a boxing match. You might find it entertaining or educational. I will show you the last part of the argument. A fan on my blog told me to turn it into a video. Well, the debate in its entirety would be a 2-hour video, so just my final reply to Kevin will be shown here, before I go into it. The last thing he said was, this is where you MGTOWs are at the core of it, full of shit. You act as if someone is going to draft you any minute into being somebody's husband, just because they have an opinion. You're very much like feminists in that regard. No sir, you don't get to weasel your way out of this with a "I'm just stating an opinion, I'm not forcing anybody" line of shit. You are advocating for marriage, you are advocating traditionalism, you are criticizing what you have referred to as libertarian-leaning MRAs to push for a pro-marriage environment. You are the one trying to defend the normalization of men taking the plunge and having the state legally bound him to a woman. You are the one pushing the traditional way of life onto us. You are the one going on the offensive. Furthermore, in the same way your opinion cannot force us to get married, my opinion cannot force you to not marry, or force you to divorce. You have no argument here, you're just trying to weasel your way out of shit, and I ain't letting it happen. You attacked the bachelor advocate portion of this movement, MGTOW or libertarian-leaning MRAs as you call them, with your propaganda and your stupid pictures, and we are arguing against your propaganda. This is the second time you've done this. The first is when you said if we weren't cut out for the white picket fence, then so be it, but don't have a go at those who do, when in reality you were on the offensive having a go at those who don't. And now you're all like, but golly folks, I am only having an opinion, my opinion can't force things. Well golly Kevin, I am only having an opinion too, and my opinion can't force anyone to do anything either, so you got nothing. You, and other tradcans, you shame those who do not conform to your pro-marriage bullshit. Our entire society pressures men and women to get married. You are encouraging and advocating that we continue to have men place themselves in a seriously bad position to be taken advantage of. You are encouraging this, in a world with very few people discouraging it. You make a mockery out of those who discourage it, and then you weasel your way out of it with "my opinion can't force people." Furthermore, every man who does get married, helps to normalize marriage. Every traditional gender arrangement in marriage, working man stay-at-home wife, normalizes it, makes it expected. Just like every pussy-begging piece of shit that pays for a woman's drink, or dinner, or movie ticket, obligates other men to have to do this if they want to date a woman. Women come to expect it from men. It's normal. Men working like slaves to afford a wife, is normal, and they help to continue making it normal, and this creates the expectation in women that this is his job as a man. Thus it helps to obligate men into being working slaves to support their parasitic stay-at-home wives who feel entitled to her husband's money because it's the social norm. And of course she can get a job, do whatever she wants, because that's normal too. A man being supported by his wife is out of style, not in fashion, practically unheard of. Men and women having loving relationships, yet living apart, with a woman being 100% self-sufficient and independent and not in a position to divorce and take his shit, or force him into payments, is abnormal, and you are continuing to make those arrangements abnormal, and you are continuing to make the traditional marriage arrangement a normal and expected way of life. You are doing this by virtue of taking part in marriage, and by promoting marriage, and by attacking those who don't. Now when it comes to those who choose to get married, in spite of the fact they are normalizing it through their actions, in spite of that, I am willing to let that part go. I am not going to disrespect those who do get married if that is the way they want to live their life, but I be damned if I am going to sit by and have fucked promoting this shit as proper and encourage it, and attack, ridicule those who oppose marriage. The moment you do that, you're my enemy. Bitch. One massive difference between MGTOW, or at least MGTOW like me, and feminists and traditionalists is, I am taking ownership of myself and the situation, and encourage my brothers to do the same. Feminists fuck up, blame the patriarchy, and do not learn from their mistakes. Traditionalists get married, that is fuck up, and when the woman fucks him over, cries boo-hoo feminism done did this. I need to find me a non-feminist woman and bellyaches about feminism. If you as a man, put yourself in the position for a woman to pull the trigger and fuck your world over, you're asking for it, and when it happens, and she pulls that trigger, you got no one but yourself to blame. You done fucked up. Did she do you wrong? Well yeah, but you allowed it. You made a bad decision. Live with your bad decision, learn from it. Many young MGTOW have learned from the mistakes of others. We see men doing stupid shit and putting himself in a bad situation and getting burned. We know we can bellyache about those nasty old feminists until the cows come home. Women will not stop acting in ways that they personally benefit from. It is our job as men, the victims of the situation, to avoid the situation, to critique our behavior, because women won't and we can't make them. We are taking ownership of ourselves, owning our shit, removing ourselves from future victimhood, and encouraging our brothers to do the same. You are putting down those of us who do this. At the end of the day, all this pointless bellyaching about feminists is just that, unproductive and pointless. Women got it made, they are consequence-free, they ain't going to change their bullshit for all the angry anti-feminists tweets and videos in the world. We, as men, we have to change. We have to evaluate our bad behavior, how it hurts us, how it empowers women, and how it fucks over our fellow man. We have got to be self-critical, and I don't care if within that self-criticism we are being just like the feminists or sounding just like a feminist. I don't give a shit. Men ain't Superman. We are dumb vulnerable monkeys too goddamn chicken shit to admit how truly weak and fragile we are. We puff out our chest, do the manly thing, and get ourselves screwed. Our macho facade is used against us, and I think deep down inside, men know this. But that fear of admitting weakness and vulnerability keeps our mouths shut, and so we just act the role of the traditional manly man. And when we get burned, we blame feminism rather than women for their bad behavior, and we blame feminism rather than admitting our weakness and bad choices, overcoming our weakness and ending our bad choices. Marriage is a bad choice for a man, and stems from weakness in this day and age. This goes beyond the bachelor advocacy found in MGTOW or whatever other libertarian-leaning MRAs who are anti-marriage you may be referring to. It goes beyond the marriage strike, and it may in some cases be altogether a pussy strike, but it goes deeper still. This is about the nature of woman, it is about the nature of man, it is a critical look at gender roles and gender identity, it is a deconstruction and evaluation of the concept of masculine and feminine, it is an exploration, an evaluation of the man and woman dynamic, and the feminine and masculine dynamic. In our exploration, the only conclusion we have come to is acknowledging how much of the old traditional role of man and woman has fucked men over and allowed the situation we are in to take place. How to fix it, how to behave and alter the situation, this is debatable, and we are still exploring our options, but the one thing we know is, the old traditional way does not work. The environment has changed. Adapt or perish is the protocol of nature. We are discussing the ways in which we will adapt. You and your traditionalist marriage crusade is antithetical to our progress. I don't mean you personally are setting any of us back. I mean the mentality acts as a constant anchor on our forward progress. Traditionalism has become the tether of old, to hold us down and stop us. The male sex, from progressing to a new adapted state, whatever that adapted state may be, we know not the way forward, but we know the way back, and we know there is no going back.
Now, that's what I want to talk about today. Our tendency as men to flee from reality, and as human beings, essentially, to flee from reality and our position therein, and how that relates to MGTOW. Right? He doesn't want us talking about things that further our understanding of why feminism gained its traction. He only wants us to stop its momentum, a task that can't even begin to be undertaken until we first understand ourselves as men and our place in the world and within our species. He doesn't want us asking questions that make men self-reflect on our own hang-ups. He just wants us to bash feminism, bash feminism, bash feminism, even when feminism is being reabsorbed into its progenitor, gynocentrism.
Men have a lot of work to do. This work is not going to be accomplished by saying one thing and doing another. It's not going to be accomplished by encouraging men to blame others for their problems and then calling themselves guideposts for male liberation. When I rejected feminism, it was because they encouraged me to shrug off personal responsibility for my own misfortunes. That was, to me, more disempowering. I can't change other people. I can only change myself and my reactions to the things that happen in my life.
The theme here is personal responsibility, self-ownership, self-criticism, honesty, practicing what you preach, etc. It is something I have been trying to get across here and there in my videos for a while now. As far back as a video I made, way back over a year ago, I think it was number 033, how I became MRA and my involvement in the MRM, where I mentioned that as much as we may dislike the fact women walk around with a sense of entitlement, it is men who convince them they are entitled to shit. We complain that women have a bit of a goddess complex. Geez, you think men worshipping them as far back as middle school has something to do with it? Maybe if us men tone down the worship, they'll tone down the goddess complex. And in my Lacy Green objectification video, she mentions street harassment, and I told my audience what we already know about how women dress like sluts for the attention. Men get harassed, maybe not sexually, on the street, and women need to quit being little crybabies and man the fuck up. But I also went into an even longer statement about it's true that men really do need to stop this bad behavior, not because crybaby cunts bitch about it, but because it is demeaning to men. It's saying damn baby you so fine your sexual power over me makes me act like a fucking retard, I'm gonna bark at you and act stupid, because I am so under your sexual power. It is degrading, and it is far better to starve the little attention whores of the attention they clearly crave when they dress like whores and provoke it. I said it back in my video to Critical G. I think it was titled Migto and Marriage, that you can't admit that there is a marriage and divorce problem, how unfair it is to men, then proceed to tell men to keep fucking doing it. I said in that video, why would anything change so long as women are benefiting by it? You can bitch about how unhealthy McDonald's is all you want. They're not changing their menu and ingredients so long as you keep buying their food, so boycott McDonald's. You can't bitch about the cost of brand name Apple phones, and then proceed to buy them. Apple doesn't care how unhappy you are with the product, they're only concerned that you're buying it. Same with marriage. The divorce courts don't care that you're unhappy with their conduct so long as you're getting divorced and paying the lawyers. Women don't care if marriage is an unfair contract to men and you are crying about it, so long as you put a ring on the bitch's finger. This shit only starts to matter when men stop marrying. In that video about grappling ignorance and Barbarossa, I mentioned that it may be typical female behavior to rely on males for support and assistance. However, the obligation to change this lies with the men. Men need to quit beating a path to get to women to offer their resources and assistance. This bad behavior on both part of men and women is benefiting women, so women sure as hell aren't going to stop. It is hurting men, so it's men who need to stop. I've said things of this nature numerous times, and people like Kevin Wayne and Feidelbergen are afraid of truth. They don't want to change. They want to practice the same detrimental behavior as always and just scapegoat the feminists. They prop up motherhood, not fatherhood, but motherhood as sacred, and remind us evil misogynists that women are natural caregivers and this is human nature and the way things were meant to be. Then of all things they fucking blame feminism for women getting custody of the children. They insist men are the providers who should work, women are caregivers who should stay home with children, and then act shocked when the judge says that in divorce, post-marriage, this arrangement should stay the same. The woman should continue mothering the children, and the father should continue supporting them. The Tradcan blames feminism. They point to a century-old tender years doctrine, in spite of the fact it is no longer relevant in divorce court. I pointed this out to Kevin Wayne, and instead of realizing his own proposed traditional male behavior is the culprit, he instead said, you'll never guess what he said. He said I was sounding just like a feminist. That's all their kind has. They refuse to be self-critical and to own their own shit and practice what they're preaching. They just scapegoat everything on feminism. They refuse self-ownership. They refuse to own up to their own shit, because they are cowards. To go back to what Barb said,
our tendency as men to flee from reality. He doesn't want us asking questions that make men self-reflect on our own hang-ups. He just wants us to bash feminism.
And one more thing, as I was over on Diana's channel, Feminism Laughing Out Loud, I was reading through the comments, and wouldn't you know it, someone done mentioned my name. You know, I'm like Bloody Mary, keep saying my name and I might come get your ass. The context of this person's post is the topic of MRM, MGTOW being just as bad as the feminists, or in this case, a mirror image of feminism. And here is this person's statement, and my reply.
Like feminists, no one will ever say to a non-feminist that they hate all men, but you can recognize it in their narrative. Can we agree with that? Now let's take for example Feminism Laughing Out Loud. Didn't she state in one of her videos that we shouldn't consider her as a woman, but as female? I wonder what could be the reason behind it. I know the reason she gave but I can't remember the name of the video. Or look at RBK. RBK said that feminism is the manifestation of women's nature. This isn't really a fact, is it? In the end it doesn't matter, at least for me, but it's good to keep it in mind.
So feminism, and all of its mental neuroticism, ain't got shit to do with women? Let me guess, communism. Yeah, it's all just socialism. Communism that hijacked our innocent women's brains and made them turn on men. All this panic of rape hysteria they call rape culture, it's just communism. And if it isn't communism, let me guess, it's the big evil spooky government that is manipulating women? If you believe the MRM is a mirror of feminism, I need you to define feminism, in a way that cannot define anything else. You can't say hate movement because animal rights activists could be described as a misanthropic hate movement. Define exactly, accurately, what feminism uniquely is, and then we can argue whether or not MRM is a mirror image. Every time I hear someone say you're just like a feminist, this usually translates to I'm a pussy-begging white knight conservative traditionalist who thinks his woman should stay home pampered like a little princess making me a sandwich so I can walk around under the illusion of being a rough and tough manly man in charge of my woman. Or it's spoken by a woman, a spoiled little girl who doesn't like feminism because feminism accidentally obligated her to work, and made marriage more toxic and now men won't marry her, and she sure does hate feminism for it. And wishes some stupid male slave would put a ring on her finger and prop her up the way she feels entitled to live. like a spoiled little princess, and she hates it when MGTOW reject that lifestyle. It makes him just as bad as the feminists. That's what it normally comes down to. Is that you? Did I hit the nail on the head, or am I mistaken? Tell us where you stand. Define exactly what your honest hatred of feminism is, so I can try to see exactly what parallel it is between MRM and feminism that you are griping about. I used a female voice for that person because I think, by the uniquely bad grammar, that is the woman who contacted me sometime around my Critical G video and was concerned I was going to become like those evil misogynists, Barbarossa and Stardust, and how it's like Rocking Mystery said, MRAs can't give up on women, and we got to find the right one. I think it's that cunt, but I could be wrong. At either rate, I seen something looking rather dradcan, and decided to step up to the plate, and asked where that person stood. I am rather positive the result will be they are a tradcan or a by any alike concerned troll of why we can't all hold hands and get along, and the moral of the story is, our movement was founded by and still is crawling with these traditionalists, and we must not tolerate it, let it slide, or pretend that because they hate feminists, or wear the anti-feminist label, that they are somehow our allies, because they're not. Feminists may pose a threat to the well-being of men, but they pose no threat to the men's rights movement. Tradcans, however, do, and we mustn't ban or censor them or just tell them to take a hike. We have to argue them point by point and annihilate them. It is necessary for our intellectual growth. Also, the longer you argue them, the more you see the misandry fly out of their mouth, and you will come to know they hold their fellow man in just as much contempt as the feminists. Granted, you argue anyone and angry hateful words will fly out of their mouth, and that's not what I am talking about. You will see by the examples they give, of just how under the spell of the pussy they are. You will see the pro-male disposability platform in which they argue from. You will see an underlying belief that a man is to be provider and protector to women, a self-sacrificing machine of labor. You will see the male-on-male rivalry in them. It's as if they believe women, the great gatekeepers of the golden uterus, are goddesses to be worshipped, and there is a system of worship and servitude, and feminism is screwing up that system, and us pesky MGTOW are just as bad as the feminists for screwing up the proper system of worship and servitude. And one more thing before I end this video, Diana Davison in the comments of her last video, the one I showed clips from, brings up a great point about the importance for MGTOW to have an anti-marriage stance.
This discussion of MGTOW as a label is best connected to my issue with married men co-opting the label. It's not just a label. My introduction to the MRM was Kay Himowitz's article calling MGTOW men Peter Pans. MGTOW is what has the mainstream shitting their pants. It is the most powerful form of activism in the MRM. I don't give a shit if people want to call themselves reptilians from the Draco system since they don't actually exist. The problem with married men trying to make MGTOW include marriage, by tackling it philosophically, is that, as these married MGTOWs have said many times, they don't like being excluded. It's not about excluding people, it's about keeping the effect going. The effect of MGTOW is that women are having hissy fits because their wedding plans are looking more like fantasies. To let married men reduce MGTOW to meaninglessness just so they don't have to feel left out is like handing over your arsenal because not everyone could have a grenade and you didn't want your army demoralized. Obviously there are a lot of issues to think about. If the MRM is now saying that guys can be traditionalist because it makes them happy to make women happy, it's like telling a heroin addict that they can do a little bit of heroin because it makes them feel good, but as long as they know heroin is bad for them then they are clean. This doesn't actually function anymore. If men can be going their own way, are men's rights activists if they only do a little bit of gynocentrism. I see the MRM and MGTOW as connected activities, but the MRM is failing because they want the mainstream attention so badly they're willing to sell out. They're not just willing to sell themselves out, they're selling out their MGTOW brothers as well. I have just said that MGTOW isn't just a label, it's activism, but I understand and value the personal transformation aspect as well. In fact, that was what inspired this video. Men need to separate from women's approval, and if that means spending time away from all women then they have to do the work. Transformation is not easy. That's why so many people say they want to improve their lives, then just keep doing the heroin, what form that heroin takes.
She has a point about how powerful of a force MGTOW is due to its anti-marriage stance. I really agree with what she is saying here. It's true that anti-marriage and blaming female nature for bad female behavior, that is feminism, is the manifestation of female nature, have been our backbone. This is really and truly the thing that separates the real deal from the lightweights, the pros from the noobs, etc. and it reveals the tradcans and hijackers among us. It's all fine and dandy to bellyache about feminism, but come on now, marriage strike, you're as bad as the feminists. The tradcans and the hijackers camouflaged within the MRM always seem to reveal themselves when they show up in our space. Furthermore, on a political level, the idea that men are doing more than grumbling at feminists because they want fucking sandwiches or something. The idea that men are just straight up done, finished, and walking away from the whole gynocentric game period, scares women. How many tradcan bitches are only showing up to be a woman against feminism because the anti-marriage MGTOW is starting to make them feel uneasy? It's easy to laugh at a bunch of guys on the internet bellyaching about women. Shit starts getting real when the marriage rate continues to plummet and there is an entire anti-marriage pro-male ideology growing like a wildfire. And I'm not saying we are having a powerful effect, I am saying what little effect we have is coming from MGTOW, and it actually rests on the anti-marriage and blame female nature aspect of our philosophy. And while I said I can accept that a man who has gotten married could philosophically and spiritually awaken due to MGTOW teachings, and in some way be MGTOW, even though I said that, I don't think I will recognize him as MGTOW, and most importantly, he shouldn't be philosophically and politically preaching under the banner of MGTOW. I know those individuals want to feel included, and I don't care. You gave up the right to call yourself single when you got married. You gave up the right to call yourself a bachelor when you got married, and you also gave up the right to call yourself MGTOW. At the end of the day you're arguing over the inclusion of a label. I know I may bring up concerns that I am trying to create a MGTOW manifesto or I am trying to turn this into the cult of exclusion. However, if we deem MGTOW by just a few things you can't do or be, including, married, preacher of traditionalism, female, male feminist, if those are the only 4 things in the world you can't do or be, it's hard to say that MGTOW is being exclusionary. And while I'm on it, female MGTOW, no such thing. Women going their own way, no, stop it. Whatever the fuck you think a woman going her own way is, you are not a man. You cannot know what it is to be a man. Your struggles are not that of men, and your situation and motivation for any sort of bachelorhood is not the same as ours. I don't know if you are rejecting gynocentrism or if you are rejecting phallocentrism. And furthermore, a woman who says I will not base my life and identity on what men want of me, and I will neither date nor marry a man, that's not even coming off as flattering to MGTOW. And if you're rejecting sex with women, marriage with women, you're not a woman going your own way, you're a normal heterosexual woman. What the fuck do you want? A cookie? Whatever the fuck you think you are or think you're doing, you are not a woman going her own way. I wholeheartedly reject the label. I consider it as being nonsense and an example of women's need to barge into every goddamn thing men do and be incorporated. Can gay men be MGTOW? Well, a part of me wants to say this is not applicable. Your homosexual struggles and relation to women are not even similar to heterosexual men's struggles in relation to women, so I want to say it's not applicable, but at the same time you're kinda sorta already the motherfucking Zen master of MGTOW. You not only reject marrying women, reject being sexually manipulated by women, reject pussy worship, reject conforming your identity to their utilitarian desires, reject dating them, reject fucking them, hell you go as far as flat out not jacking off to porn of women, or even sexually fantasizing about them. For fuck's sakes you're like the MGTOW Zen master, but at the same time, I just don't think your struggle can be as ours is. However, what about bisexual men? Of course they can be MGTOW, that's my opinion. Point is, married guys, they aren't MGTOW, and even if some way somehow they took the red pill post-marriage, no, you're not MGTOW, maybe on some abstract philosophical level or whatever. But don't wear the label. You can of course be an MRA, nothing wrong with that. And after rethinking it, can a bisexual man be MGTOW? Yes. Can a gay or transgender? You know what, I just don't fucking know. How about we'll put that on the back burner and address it if we get a few hundred gays and trannies wanting to wear the label. They can make their case for it and yada yada. As long as there is between 0 and 5 wanting to call themselves MGTOW, it's not an issue that even needs to be addressed. But no goddamn MGTOW. Stop aping us. If you're a woman and wanna support men, do it under the men's rights movement banner.
And in terms of the marriage contract, Fetal Bogan, or specifically as you reference a marriage strike, no, MGTOW do not in fact state that one cannot be a MGTOW and be married. We strongly urge men not to get married, and we do this based off of the factual evidence, the irrefutable evidence, that it is a bad deal for men. If one does still decide to get married, there's no MGTOW card membership we revoke, there's no excommunication, there's nothing.
I will take away their MGTOW card, I won't end communication with that person, and I won't even lose respect for that person. but I will not call them MGTOW, and I will not accept them calling themselves MGTOW any more than I will accept them calling themselves bachelors. The most, if not the only, defining characteristic that sets a MGTOW apart from MRM, is the whole marriage strike thing. I insist that some lines have to be drawn somewhere if MGTOW is to mean anything, because if MGTOW is do whatever you want, then we might as well start calling the critical G and rocking mystery MGTOW and adding Joe Biden to that list. If you disagree, then I am more than eager to hear your rebuttal, and perhaps you will sway me to your viewpoint, or perhaps we will just agree to disagree. After all, we're both mature adults who understand we don't have to agree on everything.